Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Relatively Damaged Live. My name is Angela, and this is
Kat, hi.
the the live shows are currently streamed to YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Remember to follow and subscribe and share with your friends. On the Monday segment of the show, Kat and I talk about things we find interesting for about 30 minutes. And so I must confess that the things we're finding interesting this month are related to my poetry book. So let's get to today's topic, which is actually witch feelings. And I'll read to you my first poem, and maybe you'll get some insight as to why that question. Even if anger may suppress my feelings, I may find a way to handle the hurt of them. But if I shall be happy, I should be able to show it. If I should ever feel like a rainbow, I may share it with the world. And if I were to dream, I may enjoy the happiness and sadness that I would learn I really have. That poem's called My Feelings. It's from my book, Poems from a Lost Soul, which is currently on pre-order for ebook on Amazon. So, my feelings, Kat.
Yeah. For me, it really is kind of it reminds me in a way kind of the masks we wear, especially when we're sad or when we're angry. We kind of are conditioned to show that we're supposed to suppress this, but we still, you even said suppress my feelings, but
Mm-hmm.
but we still have them there. And then, of course, the other part of that is we're conditioned, yes, to be happy and to show everyone, all is well with the world.
Yeah, I mean, and two, I think that what I in a sense was talking about as far as like anger suppressing my feelings when I wrote this, from what I recall, this is, I mean, mind you, this was written in the 90s, so it's been a few years, but like that the anger, I'm going to suppress the sadness and the frustration. I'm going to suppress everything else, including sometimes my anger, because I couldn't have any of them. So then I would just be angry and I couldn't have any feelings. Um,
Mm,
and then I would just get quiet. And I wanted to share, I wanted to learn how to handle them. How do I handle this pain? How do I handle this hurt? Um, I wanted to be able to show my happiness, but I felt constricted, like I couldn't show my happiness. I was always afraid to share that because something, it seemed like the other shoe would drop for me.
mm,
Um, and so in that sense, yes, a mask, right? Let me
mm.
put on this very stoic mask so that others don't really know what's going on inside of me because it's not safe.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess that's implied in there. I don't necessarily see that in the poem, but it's
It's not there.
relatable.
It's
Right.
implied.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I'm, by clarifying that, that's good because it's relatable insofar as that I think we all kind of go through that at a point in our life where it's, we're taught, people typically call them negative emotions. We've talked, I think we both prefer the term dysregulating emotions.
Yeah.
Um, and so when we're in that space of especially anger, I think you don't show that. There are places that it's appropriate to show sadness.
True.
Um,
Like funerals or um
or
yeah,
if you
where
had a
else?
breakup,
Yeah.
that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Um, and but it's like, okay, you showed it, now get over it.
Right.
People,
There
people, others are uncomfortable with the sadness. Others are uncomfortable with anger. And so, so we learn that quickly because people don't know how to express that appropriately.
or even if they do, I think know how to express it appropriately, the other person showing their discomfort, especially growing up, right? If it's a parent or even other siblings or what have you, that their discomfort could lead us to that understanding that feelings aren't okay, and I need not express them,
Mhm.
because there is, I think, that energetic exchange, whether we realize it or not. If I'm angry and you're looking at me like fearful, that
Mhm.
might tell me, oh, my anger is scary. Oh, I'm scary, not my anger is scary. Um,
Right. Well,
so
and that's where people, so, the angry man, the happy woman, you know, the sad whatever. So we put those adjectives with the person rather than saying the man expressing his anger, the woman expressing her happiness, the woman feeling sad.
right.
It's a we like I said, make it an adjective rather than a descriptor. Well, I guess an adjective is a descriptor, but there's a difference. There's a subtlety in that language, um,
Mm-hmm.
that, at least in the English language, cuts it off.
Yeah.
So it makes it,
um
instead of a temporary property, it makes it a fixed property almost.
right, so then it would be, for instance, if it was me that you were describing as angry, it would be, there's that angry woman, or
Hmm. Hmm.
Angela's angry. So implying that being Angela is inclusive of anger.
Right, right. And I mean, I think that's something that's really important. And I see that in this struggle. Hey, Paul.
Hey, Paul. Happy
Um,
Monday.
uh, in this struggle, as we're learning to express our emotions, be and learning to identify emotions, that we realize that they're fleeting, that
Right.
they're there in a moment. And so, of course, what we can call positive emotions or regulating emotions, those tend to be, wonderful. People want to see that. People like shiny, happy people holding hands. You know,
Shiny, happy people holding.
I have to go there. I don't know why it just came into my head. Um, so
But it's true. That's acceptable. That emotion is acceptable and welcome. And yes, that was by REM.
yes, yes. Um, yeah, so if I shall be happy, I should be able to show it. If I should ever feel like a rainbow, I may share it with the world. But the
Hmm.
interesting part in the poem is this last stanza: that if I were to dream that you can enjoy the happiness and the sadness. And
Yeah,
maybe,
such
I mean,
wisdom.
right. And now, given that this was written in the 90s, and you were much younger than you are now, not that you're old now, but, um, it's more like I think this is the wisdom that comes with age and experience a little bit, is live in the happiness and the sadness, and
The
realize that they are there
ambiguity.
in that moment. Not necessarily the ambiguity, but it's realizing that life is happy and that life is sad. There are
Mm,
periods of sadness, and it's okay. Like when I think of relationships or people that I've lost, in some respects, especially relationships that I have lost, there's some happiness in there.
Yeah.
Like, oh God, thank God I'm out of that. But there's also there's sadness too, because I would not have been in those relationships more often than not had I not gotten something out of it that had brought me some happiness or joy. So there is sadness for those things that are lost
Right.
when
Yeah.
when I think about them. But and there was more sadness at the time of the immediate loss. Sometimes it's just kind of a fleeting thing, like, oh yeah, I kind of miss that. And
Mm,
then you
yeah.
move on.
Yeah. I know with some of my relationships, especially at the breakup point, there could only be um, bad times that I would remember. But the further I get away, the more I remember also there were good times. But I think I
Mhm.
needed that in order to help push myself away to healthier places
Yeah.
where I wanted to be. So sometimes those feelings I think are necessary so that we can push ourselves to the next step,
Hmm.
and
Oh,
find, yeah.
absolutely. We, me. I always like to bring in recent examples. So the whole saga with Boomer the dog, and
Mm-hmm.
how we had to make the difficult decision to give it up, and there was a lot of sadness surrounding that. And but we're as we move away from it, we're finding some of the peace in it and the happiness in that. There's some peace in terms of logistics, because one dog is easier to care for than two. But there's also the happiness that Boomer's found a new home and she has a new dad, and it's all great. For Boomer, so that alleviates some of the sadness that we know it's okay.
Right.
Um, so yeah, so it's just a kind of you know acknowledging, yeah, it's sad. I miss her, but I'm also happy because I know she's got a new home. She's in a safe place. The dogs won't fight anymore, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
it's the emotions are transient,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
depending
think
on where my thought is at the time.
right, and I think it was in Susan David's book, Emotional Agility, that I learned. An emotion only lasts about 20 minutes anyway. May have been in another book, but um, knowing that, unless I'm re-triggering myself, right, that it will dissipate. It's like a wave in an ocean. It's going to come in and it's going to go out, and it's going to be okay. I think the trick is remembering that, though, especially in the midst of that emotion, because a lot of times I think I'll make decisions based on emotion instead of based on what I know to be true.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that
and
emotion will point to what I think is true too. So that could be dangerous as well.
and I think that's the key right there, is knowing that it is transient and not re-triggering.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we tend to want the highs in the society. So people, so some people with alcohol, they'll feel a buzz, and some people might say, okay, that's enough. And other
Right.
people might say, oh yeah, yeah, I like that. Give me some more of that. And then it winds up, becoming a disaster. And then, you know, so that's I think the danger of following the emotion, chasing the emotion. And then the same thing
Mm-hmm.
happens with sadness. If you re-trigger yourself when you're in a sadness or an anger, you get into a cycle, and you can fall into depression. You can, continually be angry about everything, so that everything is a trigger for you.
Mm-hmm. And it's really hard, I think, to shift mindset because those paths to that anger or that sadness are well-worn paths in the brain. If we've gotten used to going there, right? And so then it's how do we start recognizing it so that we can find that balance again, whether it's finding the good in a challenging situation, or am I going to go to depression of, oh my gosh, I'm a complete victim and I can't do anything right and blaming myself, or can it just be that this is part of life and this is part of the process?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah. And so, to kind of go back to the poem, and I know we have another poem.
We
If you don't
do.
mind, we can tie this one up. But I think it's just it it brings that out, what we want. But
Mm-hmm.
I like how you tied it up at the end, that you still have that wisdom even at that young age to realize that to know what it is that you have, to know what it is that
Yeah.
you have and what it really is.
Yeah. And I say that in that way because I think it's surprising things I lost along the way, I found again later. I forgot that I could have happiness and sadness throughout my journey. And then there was only sadness. And then, it took people loving and, reaching out to me um, so that I could remember, oh, wait, I can have both, So it's actually really interesting seeing this and knowing that it was written in the 90s and going, oh my gosh, I knew. How did I forget? You know,
Hmm.
how did I forget? A
Yeah.
life happened. I don't know. It's it's amazing. Um, it's kind of like I want to say maybe in the last year or so, when the caregivers were help typing all this into the computer and things like that, we came across a journal that I looked that we flipped through, and it was a teenage journal, and I was like, oh, ooh, yee. I went to my youngest and I said, I'm so sorry. I forgot what it was like to be a teenager. It's hard. Like, and she still brings that up to this day. She's so grateful that I recognized it.
Working with for so many years with college students, so older teenagers and young 20s, I know, you
Yeah.
know, and you're just like, oh, just wait, you'll get perspective on it, it will be okay.
Yeah.
But I do want to wrap this up because I don't want to forget the other poem.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it is really the whole idea of gaining that perspective, and I don't think we teach those things.
Mm-mm. No,
I don't
we
think we
don't.
teach those things. People have their ideas and they lock in on them, and we
Yeah.
don't teach people to have those questions. Um, and I don't know, maybe it's just the product of the life cycle, uh, or if it's a lack of teaching. But for many people, I'm not even going to say all people, it does come with age.
Well, and I think too, like family dynamics and things like that have a huge impact. And the family has changed so much in so many
Mhm.
years. Our elders aren't included with our young ones and things like that. But I digress
Right.
because I know we need to move on to the next poem,
I am chewing it up.
which is, did you want to read it?
No, I'll let you read it because it's your voice. So.
Okay, this is True Love, and it is not the True Love from the movie. What movie was that? Darn it. Princess Bride. It is not that kind of
Oh,
true love. So, anyhow, as I come to realize that joy and happiness are things I need gain out of life, it is easier to love everyone who shall walk my way. My friends might not think they are loved. May this be the time to tell them, let me also, though, remember to love myself. Though if I cannot truly say that I love myself, then I cannot truly say, I love you.
Hmm. Now, I just have to say, because this jumped out at me, the way that you read it makes me question the meaning of the
Oh, see?
second,
So
because
excited.
I had interpreted it one way, but then when you read it, it made me think of another way to interpret. So it is easier to love everyone who shall walk my way. Now I took it as anyone who shall come into my life. But then
Mm-hmm.
when you read it, I was reading it as people who think the same way I do, walk in the same way that I do.
Ooh,
I
that's
so
how you
I
took it.
when you read it, I took it the
Okay,
first
okay.
way when I read it. But when you read it, the inflection made me think that it was like I'm going to it's easy to love people who walk in the same way I do. So I don't know
Ah,
what you meant by that. I'm going to let you explain that.
yeah, I think when I'm thinking of it, it's anyone who comes my way. Um,
Okay.
anyone, good, bad, right, wrong. You know,
And that's my
it,
experience with you, so that's also why I read it that way.
yeah, and this is why I love poetry too, because I love the different interpretations that can come from it. Um, because it can also mean that, and it's not wrong. It's
Hmm.
do you see what I'm saying? Like that's what's so beautiful, and I think it's really obvious in poetry that we can all interpret it in so many different ways. Whereas in like reading a book or a nonfiction book or a fiction book, doesn't matter. As we read it, we just accept or believe that the author intended it as we are reading it, but there's still a translation that's happening from their words to our mind and how we're interpreting it. And I think that's beautiful. I just love the obviousness in poetry. So um, yeah, and I really like how I pointed out that my friends might not think that they are loved. May this be the time to tell them, like remembering that I need to tell them, I love you, I care about you, I don't always reach out to you, and you're still an important person in my life. um, yeah, because I tend to be quiet sometimes. Jan Ferguson says, let's see, powerful self love is so important toward understanding love in general.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, there's I'm going to go back to my younger years, and before we get on, we always speak a little bit about the topic. And so this kind of harkens back a little bit to that, is that kind of um like desperation. I love you, but go away, come here, come here kind of thing. Um and sometimes, I mean, I know I'm very guilty of the fact of, saying I love you because I wanted to be loved. It was
Mm.
less about it, and I'm talking about romantic love maybe, but less about the other person and more about what I needed. So if I told you what I thought you wanted to hear, then you might love me.
Oh, ouch.
Yeah. And so, so seeing this and really knowing that last statement, and then I'm gonna, go, if I cannot truly say that I love myself, then cannot truly say I love you. That's what that kind of gets me at. And for me, that journey there is is that realizing that, yeah, I do love myself. And as I love myself and come to love myself, warts and all, it is easier to love other people. There are people who I love, but I do not like them. They drive me batty. But I can truly say that I love them and that I'm concerned for them and that I hope the best for them. And that if they called me and said, in need, that I could say, yes, I can help you. Because
Yeah.
that's love. I love myself to know what that is. Um,
Yeah.
and so there's that growth in love. And then there's also, I think, the need to, like you say it, and that's why I still go into that, you know, the double meaning of that thing, and it was not necessarily your intended meaning, but it could mean really two things. The people
Yeah.
who drive me crazy. It's easier to walk with the people who think the way I do, who
Yeah.
walk the same path that I do, than the people who drive me crazy. But being able to remind people that they're loved, you know, it kind of reminds me of the five love languages. Different
Mm.
people have different love needs, and some people they want to hear the words. Some people you need to show them out of acts of service. Others are physical affection. That all those kinds of things. Just a few, I forget. You know, the
Well,
others, but
yeah.
but
I was going to
but
say, and some people need to challenge me. Like they need to know they can say no.
there you go.
I say, and I say that a little bit in jest and maybe a lot in truth, right? Sometimes that that freedom of allowing room for no is one of the best ways I can show that I love someone, is because then they know that they can be who they are 100% of the time, and it doesn't have to fit into some box I've created around the role that I think they're supposed to play.
Yes, and I'm just thinking about though, but that's because of the safe space that we set up. So to go back to the first poem, if you're giving that kind of, you're living in that emotional space where you're reacting emotionally to things. So now I'm angry, now I'm sad, now I'm happy, now I'm this. People don't know which version is going to show up because
Yeah.
it's angry Angela, sad Angela, happy Angela, instead of
Yeah.
Angela is sad, Angela is happy, Angela is angry. It's You can express all those emotions but still be in that safe space to allow people know. But if angry Angela doesn't allow for no, but happy Angela might, which version of Angela is there? So
Right.
it and
So
that's
allowing room for no in anger and in happiness and in sadness and in all those
yeah,
places.
and that's where the self love comes in, because I think one of the important aspects of self love is self awareness.
Mm-hmm.
It is awareness of that, um and being able to express the anger, express the sadness, express the happiness in a way that is genuine but not overpowering the
Yeah, I mean, I could be
the
angry.
core, your core. Yeah,
Yeah, I could be angry about something, but if I'm taking it out on you instead of just expressing it, those are two totally different things. If I'm taking it out on someone, then maybe I'm blaming them or I'm yelling at them and telling them how horrible they are or whatever. If I'm expressing it, oh, this happened, I'm so mad, I've got to work out this energy that's, bothering me, and I'm just expressing it. Those are two totally different things.
or even like, I think of it at things at home. Um, it makes me angry when you promise you're going to do something and you don't follow through. So I'm not saying you stupid, you don't do what you're supposed to do, blah 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 blah.
Right.
I'm just saying I get angry when you do not follow through. So that's the difference between a healthy expression of anger and an unhealthy expression of anger.
Even in how you just said it, you make me versus I get angry when. The you make me could be a use of like violent communication if you want to, because it's blaming and it's putting the onus or the fault on the other person for your feeling, versus when I have a feeling, if I take ownership of that feeling, and then I can point out what it was that got me there, and then we can work on it, which I think comes from a place of responsibility and love for the other person, because
Right.
I don't think everyone goes out of their way to make me to hurt me. I don't think that's reality.
Right. It could, because let's face it, Angela, the world does not revolve around you. Okay.
It does not. Thank God.
No, it doesn't revolve around me. And that's what it is. I mean, it reminded me of the conversation you had relayed to me earlier about the assumptions that we make, even
Yeah.
about other people. And so if I try to have that self love, that I'm coming from a place where I'm expressing, like you said, the nonviolent communication of way, the self awareness, the self love to say, because it has to be self love if I'm going to express something that's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
I am
Yeah.
angry when you do not do what you say you are going to do. Um, that's, I have to allow some space there,
Yeah.
for the response. But if I make assumptions, well, Angela's not doing what she said she's going to do. Well, that's because she doesn't care. That's because she doesn't love me. She doesn't.
Yeah. If that's your internal
That's
conversation.
yes. So that's why it's important to have that self awareness and that self love in order to give it to other people, because you really can't give what you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's true. Gosh, I feel like we're just getting into this, but our 30 minutes is up.
It's been a great discussion as always, and I love this idea, to help to promote your book, which is fabulous. And I've enjoyed being able to read the preview of it, and so I encourage all of our viewers to consider seeing this insight into Angela. Um, but the meat that these poems have about the human condition. And so, and like you say, poems from a lost soul, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. You
So
can
I'm
find
going to
poems.
pass it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Poems from a Lost Soul is available on Amazon as an ebook pre-order right now. We will be having paperback and Audible versions. All kinds of great stuff coming there. It's not ready yet, but we're almost there. There's also a Relatively Damaged podcast where I interview guests who talk about how they overcame their struggle and how they found hope and healing. You can find the podcast on Spotify, Apple, and many other places. I'm Angela.
And I'm Kat. We'll see you next time.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.